Carolina Tar Heels football fans. I'll say it. I'm feeling bad. I feel so. You didn't sign up for this. This is a tough way to go through a football season where you were given a lot of hope and you should have been hopeful. Your team invested in football in a way that they had not invested in football. They doubled their head coach's salary. They gave the appropriate amount of money. They found the appropriate amount of money for a coaching staff and a support staff and a front office. And the results on the field have been hard to watch. They've been, and I don't even think this is possible, pity-inducing. Like where you're watching it and going, oh my goodness, I feel bad for these players. And if you want to sound off a little bit on it, in 1 hour at 4:15, we'll open up the phone lines for you, 919-860-5326. Before we get into what I consider the root of all of these issues, the opposite side of the story deserves to be told. Bill Belichick spoke to the media, and he summed up all of the self-inflicted wounds that did his team in against Clemson.
The big plays in the passing game. I mean, we probably gave up 200 yards of passing on 5 plays. Had interceptions in all 5. So we didn't look for the ball. 3 alignment penalties that were, all our fault. So we just got to do a better job of coaching, do a better job of playing, and just eliminate the mistakes. They're fixable. I mean, there's honestly not that many things that we can't get right. But we got to do a better job of it, and we can't give up plays like that defensively at the beginning of the game. Obviously, it just tilts the score. It's too much.
I never thought, right? Because when Bill Belichick is hired by UNC, obviously we all are aware of the wider range of outcomes that are possible, right? It could crash and burn. It could be awesome. Maybe every recruit wants to play for him. Maybe he doesn't connect with the youngsters. Like, we're all aware. But there was one thing that I thought you could kind of stand on. And that was, I never thought I'd see a Bill Belichick defense at any level be the get-right game for a quarterback who wasn't seeing the field well. Bill Belichick made a living for decades during his time with the Patriots and years and years and years before as a defensive coordinator and a coach at different levels. He confused quarterbacks. He kept them guessing. Cade Klubnik came into the game not seeing the field well, turning the ball over more than he had last year, more than he had in a while, missing obvious reads that you would have thought a player like Cade Klubnik would hit. So he comes into the UNC game, and it was the ultimate get-right game for him. He completed 22 of 24 passes. He had 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He could complete short passes, easy passes, hitches, stuff over the middle, and they would catch it, turn upfield, and turn it into a big game, and he would get to just be excited by it and watch his confidence level rise. And that is the one thing that I kind of thought you could build your Bill Belichick expectations off of at UNC. So wait, what happened? Right, that's the next deal. We got to try to. They're a month into the season, roughly. We got to autopsy this thing already. What happened? The thing that I've heard most from people that right, we cover the teams we cover, from the teams that cover, or from the people I trust that try to cover the entire country. The thing that I've heard most is the nation is wildly surprised that his roster just isn't good enough. That the base level of talent isn't good enough to match up with not just the Clemsons, but any power conference roster in the country. That's a brutal realization. And some of it, right, there's an Athletic article out there with quotes from Anonymous, so I take it with a grain of salt, group of 5 coaches. Like, there's a belief that they just went out there and overspent on talent without knowing the market, without being able to judge positional importance, and they just overspent on a roster that's not good enough. So it's not that they didn't have the resources, it's that they mismanaged the resources.
They misevaluated.
Which is a problem when you come in as the professional team,
Yeah.
which much more so than every other, right? The college organizations, you judge potential and you bring them in and you try to develop them. A very pro outlook is I look at you, I decide if you're good enough to play, and I decide how much money, what percentage of our budget I'm willing to spend on you. That's free agency. That's NFL. That's pro. And they botched that. And the part I was talking with some analysts that cover the ACC. The part that they brought up was they said there's a corner and a receiver, right? And this was their brash. I'm not saying literal, but this is how they described it. Because there's a corner and a wide receiver. Everybody else I'm cutting is what they said, right? Obviously joking, right? You're not cutting everybody, and there's others, but they didn't have to say it. I went Thaddeus Dixon, Jordan Shipp. There it is, and they're almost the the control in the experiment. Like you see them out there playing what should be like pretty high level power conference football, and it just when it stands out that aggressively against everything else on the field, you're going, oh. I mean, they're good players. Don't get me wrong; they're not first round picks, at least not as I see it right now. And they stand out like sore thumbs on the roster. It is more than just this is the first year with a new coaching staff. Because, you struggle early on against TCU. I do think you give them a little benefit of the doubt. Like, first game, that's a tough one to catch right out of the gate. They haven't established their culture. But then you get 4 non-conference games, including a little ramp-up with some gimme games in the middle. Should have been gimme games in the middle.
Yeah.
You get a bye week, and you're like, okay, no, now there should be something here. And you come out and you give up that first quarter, and And you start to hear the defenders saying, oh, it's his first year, it's about establishing the culture, We've seen coaches with significantly less resources across the country do better in their first year taking over a moribund franchise, a moribund program. And UNC was not moribund. They were not dreadful. They were not awful. They were still cranking out NFL players. They were still bowl eligible. You can say whatever you want about Mac Brown. He very rarely went into the dungeon, record-wise. Right? There was some semblance of there's a floor that we might hit, but the floor is not the dungeon.
Yeah, there's 6 wins at least every year.
Exactly. I don't see how this team gets 6 wins. So it's already below where this franchise has been, and you've invested significantly more in it. The roster not being good enough is wild because it tells me a few things. It tells me they're going to have to go out and improve the roster if they want to be any better next year, right? They're going to have to go out and recruit heavily out of high school, and I'm talking about land the 4s and 5 stars that can play early. They're going to have to fill holes in the transfer portal. They're going to have to do quite a bit of work, and what does that mean? The beginning of next year is going to be about building chemistry again. It's going to be about establishing the culture again. Because establishing the culture with guys that graduate and guys that leave, that's fairy dust. That's gone. Right now you got a bunch of players playing elsewhere that know how to play like Belichick wants them to play, and they're on some group of 5 roster on the West Coast. And I'm sure we will, and I'm sure we could. We could dive into, why weren't they able to run the ball? And part of it is Clemson has a really good defensive front. Like I don't want to act like Clemson didn't play a role in this, but I think the overwhelming deal here is you're asking guys to do more than they're capable of doing, and that's a no-win situation. Right? You might have imparted the culture you wanted or at least the knowledge of assignment football that you wanted, and they're sitting there going, all right, I know I have to run by this guy. He's 2 steps faster than I am. It's not about making a decision here, right? It's your running back gets one-on-one with the safety. That's great. That's what the play is designed to do. If the safety's making the tackle every time because your running back doesn't have the shake, and I'm not talking about a specific running back, I'm just painting examples of how it might not be a scheme thing And even if it is a scheme thing, I don't see how you're surprised by that based on some of the people you put on staff. There's a distinct difference in watching UNC play against other power conference opponents where you're looking at it and going, something doesn't look the same on their side versus UNC's side.
No, they simply don't belong. Like, you watched that game on Saturday, like, UNC did not belong on the field with Clemson. And it's not like this Clemson team is going to win a national championship this year. They're simply not.
Far from it.
But if you're in North Carolina, how much of this are you willing to take? Because being there on Saturday, the stands were about 60% full. I'm like, it's a month ago, this place was insane. Mm-hmm. Now, a month later, there's apathy. I walked around the concourse at the end of the first quarter, early second quarter, and people are already leaving. The level of apathy is already set in at a deeper level, and I think even there was with Mac Brown to an extent, because people were expecting more. I was like, well, wait a second. It was better with Mac Brown. At least we were 500 last year. And we're 2023. You were 8-5. At least you had that. You lost in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, but at least you won 8 regular season games. I don't know how much UNC is willing to take of this, or at least UNC fans are. And you know what? They shouldn't, because you're paying this guy how much more money? You're giving him how much more resources than Mac Brown, and they're worse? Why would anyone want that?
And the issue isn't even like, when do you want to move on? The issue is, when is it worth it to pay the amount you need to pay to move on? I think if Bill Belichick didn't have a buyout, if he didn't have any more guaranteed money beyond this year, I don't know if he makes it to the midway point. I don't know if they don't go full David Tepper and go first season, messed up, Frank Reich, see ya, to Bill Belichick. But it becomes a business decision as much as it is a football and a fan apathy decision. Can we afford to move on and still run a football program? Because what I've seen on the field, and I don't say this to like laugh or dance on Bill Belichick coming to college and, oh, he thought he was going to be this and it's not, or, oh, he thought he could hire this guy and it didn't work. I say it from a pure, I say it all the time. It's good for us professionally to have good athletics teams and all the programs that we cover, right? I want the ACC to come down to the 3 teams in the triangle with Wake hot on their heels every year. Like, if we can make that happen, that would be great. And I'm looking at UNC right now going, well, maybe we can have Duke and State with Wake hot on their heels, because UNC is moving in the wrong direction. And that's just an objective opinion.